Thank you for joining us on another episode of Popcorn for Breakfast. With me, as always, your co-host, my co-pilot for today, Kirk.
Hello, hello. I don't know. We're going to learn in a little bit here if I'm grabbing the right kind of wheel, if it's this, if it's just the stick.
I'm not an expert, but it looks right. It looks right. It feels right to me. We'll find out. But I'm your other co-host, Cam. And as Kirk's alluding to, we're going to be talking a little bit more about Top Gun Maverick today because it is the biggest film of the summer. No doubt. It already is. Sure, that may change from a box office perspective in a couple of days when Jurassic World Dominion hits theaters. Kirk and I do have a review that we'll be recording later tonight. Date of recording today is June 9th. So we'll be releasing this episode next week. But the biggest movie of the summer so far has been Top Gun Maverick. There's no doubt about it. This is a film that has been well received by critics, well received by us. The A+ on Cinema Score, 97% on Rotten Tomatoes. We gave it high scores. We loved it. Massive box office numbers. And we just wanted to dive a little bit deeper into it. So today, for something completely different and something we hope to be doing a lot more of here in the near future, we have a subject matter expert on the podcast with us today, Kirk. And that is Mike Hurd, who is a retired Air Force sergeant and fighter jet maintainer. So we're going to bring him in. Mike, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Thanks for being here.
By the way, if you're in a fighter jet, it's a stick.
It's a stick.
It's a stick. Okay.
And there you go. And if you're in the backseat of if you're a naval aviator, you're in the backseat, you're a Wizzo, you have no stick.
Ooh.
See, that's scary because I'm a control freak. I often feel like if we're in a car, I want to be the one driving the car. And even though I don't know how to fly an airplane, I feel like when I'm in an airplane, I wish that I was at the sticks. I really do.
They're not flyers.
Yeah.
No, I mean the backseater is not a flyer. Right. He's just a weapons systems officer. So right. I didn't mean to just jump in there.
No, I love it.
Please do.
That's what we're here for. So yeah, Mike, thanks for being here. Obviously want to get into your background and your expertise and talk a little bit about Top Gun. We're going to get into the movie a little bit. Definitely want to hear how you feel about the movie, but we'll get to that at the end.
Okay.
But first, Kirk, you want to kick us off with a couple of questions for Mike?
I do. So the primary jets used in this, the things that are flying through the air, crazy acrobatics, Tom Cruise is just a beast in these, are the F-18s. What can you, with your extreme expertise, tell us about this aircraft?
It's a Navy jet. How's that?
That's it. Next question.
Actually, those are pretty. Actually, what you saw was the Super Hornet. So the new Super Hornet, they came online, accepted by the Navy, and I think they flew on the USS Abraham Lincoln in 2001. So what they did was they took an amazing jet, the F-18, and made it better. So it's 20% bigger than the previous jet. It carries 30% more fuel. It has 41% more range, and it also has 50% more loitering time. Now, I can say, okay, Mike, what is loitering time? Okay, you ever see the signs say no loitering? Okay, yes. I mean just like hanging around. So they had the capability just to fly around. Like the best aircraft to do that is an A-10. Because they provide combat support for military operations, take out tanks, and provide close air support, firepower for troops on the ground. Okay, so they can do the same thing. They can loiter like 50%, which is a considerable amount of time for a jet that has two engines in it like this. Think about this. This is an aircraft that has to be catapulted because it weighs probably think of a bus, just a regular bus. One of these metro buses driving around down here, it can throw that bus 6 miles. That's how much force it takes. Those guys are getting about 4 Gs when they take off.
Wow!
So that means your body is 4 times. Think about what you weigh and what that 4 times that would be. Just taken off of an aircraft carrier. Okay, so it just throws you into the air. They're full afterburner. They're burning fuel. They're taking off, and they're flying fast. a lot of times what they'll do is after they take off, they'll refuel. They'll hit a tanker, and then they'll go do their mission. Unless they're just doing combat support around the aircraft, because that's what they do. And I'll talk a little bit about that later if you want to know a little bit more about carrier groups. The aircraft carrier doesn't just go out there by itself. They have massive protection under the water and on the surface and in the air. Think of them as the fourth largest air force in the world, each one of them. Each one of the 11 aircraft carriers we have is the fourth largest air force in the world.
Wow.
Yeah, and the aircraft carrier featured in this movie it is an active aircraft carrier, right? This was the USS Theodore Roosevelt, is that right?
Yep, Theodore Roosevelt. Mm-hmm.
And so did they have to have, when they're filming, would they have had to have some of those same support groups in place just for precautions?
Absolutely. They never go alone. I mean, you're always under threat. It doesn't matter if you're in U.S. waters or not. There's always a carrier group with those vessels. It's called SOP, Standard Operating Procedures. For instance, whenever they were flying into the enemy territory, and all the F-18s were flying into the enemy territory, and you saw the Tomahawk missiles take off.
Yeah,
those were launched from cruiser ships that's what they do. They primarily carry cruise missiles, so they'll launch them out. They'll go out. I will tell you, the cruise missiles, they're subsonic. So what they probably did, that was kind of cool. They showed them flying. That was one of my favorite scenes, by the way, was the cruise missiles flying over top of the Hornets. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
What they did was, all that stuff is depicted correctly, and they all have those ships surrounding them. And during the filming, they did that as well. I did send a little something to Kirk, telling him how much it costs to operate a ship, one aircraft carrier a day. It's probably more than that now. $16 million a day.
Whoa.
A day.
Multiply that times how much time they are out in the ocean.
Incredible.
That absolutely blows my mind. I mean, is there a way that I could purchase somehow with a large sum of money the jet and then have it operated, but like get money paid back to me? Like, how can I be an investor in this to gain money from this? Is that possible?
You already are. You're a taxpayer.
Yeah, there you go.
Perfect. So
I appreciate you guys, and I appreciate you guys working, because I work for the government.
That's right.
From the government. I'm retired from the military one time over. So
there you go.
Keep working, guys. Keep working.
No doubt. I have another question about the planes or the jets in this one. So in the first Top Gun movie, it seemed, and I think they were presumably, it was 36 years ago, so presumably different jets that were being used then. But it seemed like everybody in the F-14s, which is actually the jet that they used at the very end of this movie too,
which was
right?
Awesome, by the way.
That was a great scene. But all of those,
not true, but
sure.
Technically, he could do it. I mean, like he said, like Rooster said, do some of that crazy pilot stuff. You stop thinking and do some of that crazy pilot stuff.
Yep.
That's what he did.
It is.
Thinking outside the box. So,
and what I find interesting is that those jets all seem to have an engineer, right? And the F-18s that we saw in this movie, it seemed like there were some that had engineers in the back who were not at the sticks, just working the plane. So what's the difference?
Are you talking about the guy in the back seat?
Yeah, in the back seat.
Okay, that's the weapons systems officer.
Okay, and so why is it that some jets in this movie or in general have a weapons systems officer and some don't? Is it just the type of payload that they carry, or?
Yes.
Okay.
It's okay. So you have. Let me go back a little bit further in time here and tell you a little bit how all this came about. So you used to have Growlers and Predators. Okay. These were A6s. They weren't A6s. They were another aircraft. I can't think of the proper name right now. But so the Prowler had 4 crew members: a pilot, co-pilot, weapons systems operator, and an offensive and defensive system operator. Okay, the 2 guys from the back seat. They didn't have a stick with them, but they did all those different weapon systems. Then the other 2 guys who flew the Predator, they had the weapons on the aircraft itself, and they would fire the weapons in there. So kind of the roles are different because they've consolidated and simplified the ability of a pilot to do all these things. With everything is is, right there in front of them. And to be honest with you, pilots they actually learn this blindfolded, like where the buttons are, where the switches are, where the circuit breakers are, things like that. Those are all things that, because you do it so often, it's just become second nature. So to answer your question it depends on the role of the aircraft. Okay. Like they're called fighter attack aircraft. Now, fighter aircraft just goes in and fights, but a fighter attack aircraft can do this, a multi-role aircraft. They're all multi-role aircrafts, but you have a backseater like that. He's the one who like locked the radar or the laser in there, laser pointer.
Yes.
What it is,
yep.
The advanced laser pointer. Like, the little laser pointer you guys use. Well, they have those, but they're like in different spectrum. You can't see, but the weapon can see it. So that people can't see them and shoot the guy pointing the laser.
Mm-hmm.
The Air Force calls them sniper pods. And they have them mounted on almost all their aircraft now. And so the pilot can designate a target himself, whatever he wants to shoot on the ground or normally on the ground. And he can drop that weapon and follow that dot, and it'll lock onto it. I mean, you saw how that thing, like it rotated around, like a crazy head, like a snake or something, or like an owl.
Yep.
Well, that's what they do. And then points that designator on there, and then that weapon follows it right in there and strikes. That's why we're the best at precision guided weapons, is because of that fact right there. And GPS, which we do that as well.
Wow.
Too much? Sorry.
No, it's perfect.
I'm in awe, honestly. And I think what I'm stuck on also is that you said that you get trained learning this blindfolded. I stub my toe with all the lights on. So I'm trying to think, like, with the everything blinded, sensory just deprivation and knowing where all the tools are. But you absolutely would need to know that, because as we see some of our heroes in this movie, the missiles blow and the fog comes over and they can't see anything, right? So they've got to know any instant exactly where everything is. That's so impressive to me.
So you really got to trust, they call it, there's visual flight rules and there's instrument flight rules. Okay, so you really got to learn how to fly with just instruments. I'm gonna throw you another aircraft in here. Back in the old B-52 days, my friends worked B-52s and they were on standby to launch and go fire nukes off into Russia. And so what they did was they blinded the cockpit. They had shields or, like curtains. They would put these curtains in there, and they had to use the infrared on the front of the aircraft to take the aircraft down to the runway and take off with that infrared. They had to trust the infrared camera and their instruments to be able to take off, because they were, they didn't want to be blinded by the flash of a nuke going off. So that's the kind of thing that, people take for granted. They'll go, oh, these guys get paid too much to fly airplanes. So no, they don't, because not an easy task.
No way.
No, it kind of the stakes are a little bit high. That there's that factor too, right?
Yeah, they're extremely high.
Yeah,
it is life or death.
So,
right.
So when Miles, let's get into the movie a little bit. So when Miles Teller's rooster takes a blind shot at the end because the indicator is malfunctioning on the other jet, is that what he accomplished? Is that possible?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because
I thought that was just insanely cool. He was like, "We're out of time. I got to shoot it blind," and just nails the target. I was like, I was blown away.
Yeah, because again, you got to trust your instincts. Those guys, think about the repetition. They do this over and over again. It's not like the very first time they've ever done it. You know how like you go in, you play the little arcade game where you go in there with a little claw, and you go, and after you've done it like 20 times, you can go in there and grab it, whatever. But you got a feel for how the instrument works. Same way with an aircraft. Those guys, they fly in, they practice. Back in my day, pilots did a lot of things. Did something called dive toss. So dive tosses, they had these. This is before precision guided weapons. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They would take an aircraft, they would fly it right at the target. They would release the weapons, then they would fly away. And those weapons would continue that way because just sheer inertia and the fact that that's where they release them, going that way. And so think about the trust, that you have to have, and the ability to guide that aircraft straight at the target and then know exactly when you have to release the weapon and pull up.
Yeah,
I love
amazing.
that. I think that leads us right into my next question, which I think a lot of people always wonder, like, this was such a fun ride, this movie was.
Oh, absolutely.
And obviously, we know the training that went into it with the actors, but we also know that when movies come out, there are some creative liberties sometimes. So are there any moments in the movie, some aerial moves that would not be allowed, illegal moves, or are impossible to execute with this type of jet? Did you see any of that in the movie?
A lot of it, but I tried to
Hollywood.
It was, there's a lot of Hollywood in life and a lot of that. And the fact that, so you have guys that are over G-ing their aircraft, right? They're just like pulling 8 or 9 Gs. Now the aircraft's designed to do that. That's exactly what it does. And like, for instance, an F-16 will not let you over G the aircraft. Fly, you can do the stick and it can fly. But once you get to 9 Gs, it stops. It won't let you do any more 9 Gs. So, I have seen the F-18s, the Super Hornets just like this. I've seen the Blue Angels do that Cobra maneuver, where they go full up straight. And that's because they can suck in as much air as they want. That's a problem with a lot of jets is if they were to try that maneuver, they would stall. That means they wouldn't have enough air coming into the engine and they would just flame out. That's a problem. Yep. So those guys, that was very highly likely. They do that. They can do that, and it's a daredevil move. But they would be able to do that. Like you would not purposely want to destroy your aircraft by overg'ing it. I have done inspections on aircraft that overg'd. There's a lot of bent stuff and broke stuff on the inside of the jet that you wouldn't imagine. You can break. As a matter of fact, it's pretty risky because you can break the engine mounts on the aircraft, and the engine can just just break away. It's held in place by bolts, but it can still break away and then start sucking in all this metal, and then things are even worse than getting shot at because now you're being shot at by your engine, and it can come apart and kill you and blow up your fuel because it's surrounded by fuel. In between those engines, is our fuel cells sitting in there between that fuselage. That fuselage is just not an empty airframe. It's just not empty like you can walk inside it. They have bladder tanks inside there full of fuel, jet fuel. So think about this. Engine comes apart and it goes through those fuel cells and they blow up. Because they're hot. Number one, it's hot, which is what it takes. Hot, fuel, air, boom.
Yeah.
Yikes.
Scary. And now you guys are going, scary. I will never fly again.
Like I'm about to go cancel my Delta flight here.
So when I fly, I close the window because I don't want to see what the air crew's doing before we take off.
Good to know. That's a good tip. Luckily, I have no idea what I'm looking at whenever I look out the window. So
I do, and it frightens me.
Oh boy.
I'm sorry, but
no, that's fine. But it does make me wonder, there were actors, untrained, somewhat trained professionals flying these actors. I mean, the professionals flying the actors around were obviously the real deal, but the actors had been trained for a month by Tom Cruise and by professional fighter jet pilots. They're obviously not flying the jets because that takes years and years of training and tons of expertise, but the experience that they're going through is very intense. The G-forces and everything else. How amazing of a feat is it that they were able to get these people from off the couch to fighter jet ready in the time that they did?
Well, they were passengers. Number one.
Right.
I've been a passenger in the back of an F4 twice. Got to fly supersonic and I actually got to fly a little bit. And so I've had, and I was a young 22, 23-year-old guy that had to fly in the back of these jets. And we did supersonic and we did touch and goes and missed approaches, all these things those guys did, and fly and, do loops and all that crap like that, all the things that they get to do. So, here I was just a 20-some-year-old young guy, maintenance guy. I got to do that. And they actually went through the proper training. They did the crash course. They had to do the water survival, what happens if you go in the water. And that's pretty, you think about it. I mean, I don't know how many people are not scared of water, but I know a lot of people that can swim.
Terrifying.
That have panicked being bound in there with a seatbelt, turned upside down in the water, and then you have to get yourself out of there. Hold your breath the whole time while you're doing it. Do all these things. So my hats off to them for what they had to do. So that was pretty intense and pretty fascinating that those men and women were able to do that. But I'm not surprised. I mean, it's a mental attitude. It's a mental thing. If you can say, I can do this, and you may fail a couple of times, but you say, I can do this. And that's what they did. They forced themselves to do it.
Yeah. Pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
So my hats off to them because that's me.
Well, I think a lot of people, and it's because of the vicious cycle that is the internet these days. A lot of people in the rumor mill thought these people were flying the fighter jets. And I was like, that's insane. There's no way. And so I researched it more, but I think when some people hear that they didn't fly, they're like, anybody could do that. But I mean, you're talking pulling tons of G's and doing the kinds of things that they are doing. That's got to still be pretty intense, especially, being prepared for emergencies and things like that. Like that's scary stuff.
Yeah. And actually they said that Cruise wanted to make sure that it was very realistic. He goes, this is like a love letter to aviators. And he wanted to go out there and really show, because he wanted to reflect in their faces, the sheer weight of what it takes to be a fighter pilot. Because it does. I mean, it feels like you're pulling your skin off your face when you're like that, and it's not what you think. It's not a fun and games being a fighter jockey. Those guys, they're cocky for a reason. They really are.
You got to have the killer instinct. Yeah,
I like that because that's what you want. You want cocky, arrogant guys like Maverick, to be on your side.
Right.
You want them on the other guy's side. You want them on your side. So.
Fearless.
I can appreciate it. Yeah, I have stories of sitting in a room with fighter pilots, and they're pretty merciless on each other.
When you went supersonic, how many G's does that pull again? When you were,
not really. It just depends on like what. Here's what we had to do, because I was in an older fighter jet, like I was an F4, like they're like the third generation.
Okay.
Ask me about the generations. Well, they're third generation. Because of the advanced electronics, radar packages, the fact that I used the radar to lock on. So, but there was really no sensation. I mean, I had like one of those little 110 cameras. Like I took all kinds of pictures and stuff.
Oh, cool.
You could see on the edge of the intake, you could see it was like a haze or something like that. That was about it. He goes, okay, Sergeant Hurd, we're going 1.1 Mach. And I'm like, all right, cool. I go, okay, this feels like we're going fast in the air. So, but I got to do it several times. I'm maybe one of the few enlisted guys you've ever met that's got to fly supersonic.
That's so cool.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that was pretty amazing. That's one of my little interesting facts you don't know about me. I got to fly supersonic different times.
Yeah, it's good for the dinner parties. Good for the icebreakers.
It is. It's a lot of fun.
So you mentioned wanting to have these arrogant guys on your side. Well, let's talk about the other side, because there is as they often do in military movies, there is a sort of rogue nation, an unnamed enemy that's in this movie, but they have jets that they continuously refer to as fifth generation jets that are more powerful than the F-18s. So based on what you saw in the movie, is there a comp for what those jets that they're describing are? Like, is there something that is similar out there?
So I'll give you some really good examples of real world aircraft. Okay. So the United States, we're like leading edge when it comes to fifth generation stuff. There's really nothing that can touch the F-22.
Okay.
And then the F-35, the newest version of that, another fifth generation aircraft. The Russians are trying to build a fifth generation aircraft. It's called the Su-57 Felon. That's what you really saw in the movie. That was a fifth generation aircraft. And then what's the one the Chinese have? The J-20. I wrote these down. So I have my little cheating.
I love it.
Here. So because I wanted to make sure that whenever you asked me these questions, I had good answers. So they're just copies of what we have, basically. We're pretty leading edge on all this stuff. When it comes to the fiber that we use, carbon fiber that we use to build the aircraft. We're unparalleled with that. They can copy all they want, but they don't have that technology to be able to build those kind of aircraft. A few years ago, I got to go to like a rocket factory out in Maryland, part of my job. I got to see how they do that. They take this carbon fiber and they wind it, and that's how they make the frame of the rocket itself. The outside of it, it's a carbon fiber because there's a lot of stress on it, like metal would break, and but this doesn't. It's just got such a high tensile strength. So our aircraft are made of these carbon fiber like sheets. It's pretty interesting, and you really don't want to get them stuck in your finger. Because I used to work when I was running the F-16 crew chief program. I had guys that worked on the F-117s, and so they were telling me stories about like getting, those carbon. They had to go in there and they had to surgically remove those little carbon fibers from their fingers.
No way.
They said it hurt like a razor. It never stopped hurting. It was like a razor blade in your finger. It was just a little fiber. So you can imagine how much fun that was.
Wow.
So those there truly are about 4 fifth-generation aircraft, and they just have advanced electronics, the flight ability of the aircraft. You saw some of the maneuvers that what they call that. It's not the Cobra maneuver, but it's kind of like flying flat like a leaf.
Yes.
Just like twisting.
Yeah, that was cool.
That move right there. Yeah, those are actual moves that aircraft they can do maneuver, and that's because they have what's called thrust vectoring. Thrust vectoring is when the nozzles of the exhaust, they'll turn down or they'll move to the side like this. So like when they're flying like that, they're not moving the flight controls. They're moving the thrust on the back of the aircraft. It's turning one way or the other. So the aircraft itself looks like it just turns like that, just like that.
It's really cool.
More stuff that you're like, how do you even know that?
That's awesome.
It's super impressive.
I'd love to keep. They say if you stop learning, you just get stupid. Well, I don't want to get stupid.
Absolutely.
I keep learning, and I love this stuff. And as aircraft advance, I love to watch. And that movie was just like I said. I really enjoyed it. I go some of the stuff I'm like going, nah. I will tell you one of my favorite parts.
Yeah.
Where he took off in the F-14 on the end of the runway or on the taxiway. He says, "You do know we're on taxiway, right?" He says, "Just strap in. Just let's go." He goes, "I'm going to go for it." And that was pretty awesome. Although I'm not sure he could actually make it because of the age of the aircraft and just different things. He did knock the nose landing gear off, by the way. I didn't note that. I tell my wife, it says, they're going to have to crash land on the carrier.
Yeah.
And she goes, "You know that?" I go, "Trust me. It's part of the plot." And then, that was, and then the P-51,
yes,
I just had like this, place in my heart for these old aircraft. Like the P-51 was just this amazing aircraft. It's just too bad it came at the end of the war and not earlier. It was just, right. It's just a beautiful aircraft, and I just love the sound of it. And there's just some things, a crew chief just never stops loving. That's one of them.
Yeah, no doubt. And that's actually Tom Cruise's personal jet. That one. That's pretty cool. The fact that he, you have to respect that about Tom Cruise, that he really walks the walk with the roles that he's in. He does the stunts. He flies the planes. He knows what he's doing. So that's really cool. Little bit upset he didn't get to buzz the tower one last time there. I was waiting for that moment. I was like, come on, give it. I mean, he kind of did, but he didn't request it. That's
but he did buzz the admirals. Remember?
Yeah. At the very end. I wanted them to be, this is Maverick requesting permission to buzz the tower. Permission denied. That's what I wanted. But it was great.
It was a fun ride.
Yes,
fun ride. It really was.
One of the best finales of a movie. And just when you think that the finale's over, they've done that part, and Maverick crashes and goes down in flames. You think, okay, they're going to wind this down. Nope, here comes finale part 2, and it's Rooster and Maverick trying to get out of enemy territory. Yeah. Really cool. Well, Mike, thanks so much for being here. We learned a lot. I'm going to go back and listen to this probably 3 times so that I can really impress my parents when I take them to see the movie this weekend. So don't tell anybody. But it's been great having you, and appreciate you sharing your expertise with us.
Well, thank you for asking me, and I hope I didn't bore you too much with all the details.
Impossible.
this is going to be one of our most downloaded episodes, I feel like.
No doubt.
This is just, people want this. They're craving this information, and we're just so thankful to have you. So thanks again. We appreciate you.
I really appreciate the fact that you guys asked me to do this, because again, there's nothing better I like to do than talk about, jet aircraft.
Yeah. It's best of both worlds. Talking about aircraft, talking about movies. We love it. Thanks again, Mike. We'll talk to you later.
Loved it. Thank you. I appreciate it, guys.
All righty. Bye. All right. And that's retired Air Force Sergeant and fighter jet maintenance, Mike Hurd, the expert, here with us on Popcorn for Breakfast. That was awesome, Kirk. We have to do more of that. We have to.
Oh yeah, this is groundbreaking because he's our first official special guest on our episode, and I would never think that we would have that kind of access to such an expert, and ever think that the movie world would connect with the real world with the military. It's absolutely phenomenal. The one question I wish we'd have asked him is how regular are those volleyball games, those shirtless volleyball games?
Yeah, the beach football, the beach volleyball. It
How
seems
often,
pretty frequent, right?
Right. Like every weekend, probably. Like, it's volleyball time. Let's go.
Hey, I mean, if you believe what you see in the movies, you can't really deny that. But Top Gun Maverick will undoubtedly remain the movie of the summer until somebody knocks it off that throne. And so far, there's no contest. So go out and see it if you haven't already. There were light spoilers in this episode. We'll be sure to flag that. But that's on you for not seeing the best movie of the summer so far. If you get spoiled, I mean, you've had 3 weeks at this point. You got to get after it. I'll be going to see it again this weekend. But until next time, I want to thank you guys so much for listening. I want to give a special thank you to our executive producer, Ryan Spriggs, as well as the band Rhetoric, who created our original music. And we'll be signing off. Permission to buzz the tower, Kirk?
Permission granted.
Let's go!